Uh, see?
Hmm.
Okay. So today we want to talk about a subject that we have talked about before, but it is going a little bit more in depth into it. I've recently done a little course on it. Ben, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it is the topic of shame and how blokes deal with it. And um, today is just going to be more of a discussion about the concept of rather than our deepest, darkest secrets. Um, so, can anyone remember back to our when we last did a session on it, but the rough definition of what shame is, and perhaps the difference in relation to guilt? Or do you just want me to tell you?
Is it something like shame is nah, it's gone. Not a
Okay.
great
Yeah.
start.
Do you just want me to say?
Yeah.
Is guilt something that you've like when you've done something to someone
Mhm.
else, whereas
Mhm.
shame's like something which is internalized that you don't like about yourself?
That Steve's hanging on to his health by a thread.
And
He's
gets the
still
definition
just
verbatim.
yeah. So
What do you think my fever dreams were about last week?
um, so yeah. So shame, I would say, guilt is when we've done something wrong. Shame is when we think we are wrong as a concept,
Mm.
you know? So
Hmm.
doing something wrong versus we ourselves are wrong. There's a really good definition I got of it is that shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing we are flawed or unworthy of belonging or love. Yeah? So how do you guys think that you respond to shame, or some of the ways you can possibly, not you personally, but what are the ways you would say you would respond to shame? This is interesting. And the reason I bring this up before you go on, I know that we are taught very young as guys not to and taught not how to deal with it properly. And so a lot of it, sometimes shame can manifest itself as anger. So we feel ashamed and we know anger, so anger will come out, or people pleasing will come out, or there are lots of other ways. I just wondered if there's any that you guys can think of. Perhaps that's maybe not personal, but just how someone might deal with shame.
I think your one that springs to mind is like an avoidance of it by,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Big one.
when you think like, typical vices that you might partake, that are not good for you.
Okay.
Like say if I think about like, I don't know, gambling, excessively or
Mm.
something, that's an escapism almost.
Yeah.
It's a distraction.
Mm.
So I think those like that avoidance of it and not dealing with it head on
Mm.
leads to those kind of behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Distraction.
Yeah, massively. So avoidance is a really big one because when we feel like we are ourselves are wrong, that's a really horrible feeling to sit with. So yeah, that's when the avoidant tendencies will come in. So ranging from anything from like gambling to excessive drink to games to porn to whatever your vice is, anything that's kind of avoidant. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Can anyone think of any other things? I'll speak to that.
Probably the like permeation into like other areas of your life. That's a big one, right?
Okay.
So you feel shame around a specific incident or disagreement or something that's happened, say, like at work or in your personal life, and then actually that starts to transfer over into like other relationships or other areas of your life.
Mm.
Interesting. Okay. Can you speak more to that or no?
Yeah, so like, let's just say that you've messed something up at work, right? And you're kind of hard on yourself,
Mm,
and then you tell yourself, oh, like, I'm not worthy, I'm this, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm, that whole imposter syndrome thing, and then you start to like question, like, okay, maybe I'm not a good husband, or maybe I'm not a good friend,
mm,
or like, you start to kind of question those other relationships. So permeation or permeates in other
yeah.
areas.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful use of the word. Where do you think? Where do
Gold
you
star
think?
for you, Ben.
That's all I
Right,
wanted.
just go.
That's all I wanted.
Gold
External
star.
validation.
I had to think to myself, what is he saying? I don't understand. The one I was going to add, which I think is the same thing that Ben is, like, you just completely beat yourself. Like, you're internally
the
just
negative
like
self-talk, just
negative
like
self-talk.
you're a
That's it right
dick,
there.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you think? Because it's interesting. Where do you think the shame comes from? Where do you think that starts?
Your parents.
Oh, we go
Okay.
that far back.
Mhm.
Is it
We're
like a
it's
fundamental?
generational shame. It's come from my parents' parents.
Okay. Have you got any examples?
No, I'm just doing.
Well, it's not wrong.
I
If
don't
there is
know, like
generational shame.
Do you think there's something in the comparison? Because, like, it's definitely because when you talk about being a kid and your parents, it's almost like it never really happened to me, I wouldn't say, but I've seen it happen where, like, people slag their own kids off and say, like, oh, wish you were more like so and so's kids, they're good as gold or something, and it's like
Mm.
that's like so damaging, I suppose, to a kid who's so impressionable to then be compared to others. So maybe there's something in that comparison, like,
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
others, because that's definitely kind of what I've always thought about when I think about shame. It's like it's that comparison of me to this worldview or my view of what I should be. It's always a comparison that creates that shame.
Yeah.
Nobody I like around me would like even relate to any of the inner thoughts or even actually say that any of that was true. Probably the opposite, but it's just that internal comparison standard that
With
you're not
that,
gonna
I was gonna just simply say ego, right? Like, it's the idea of ego inside of us that is formed from our surroundings as kids, right? Like, as you grow, like, you form this ego, and like that's like in my school of thought, like that's like all the bad shit in my brain. Not necessarily all bad, but it's like, it's the comparative. It's the one that creates negative self-talk. It's the one that says you're an imposter. Like, so it's that it stems from shame, stems from ego.
Yeah, beautiful.
yeah, like I think like just on the back of that, Taned, like often when I feel shame of, like, normally when I've done something, like I've said something wrong or I've made a tit of myself or whatever it is, which is often right. Normally it comes from a comparison to myself and how I think I should be. So like, why did you behave that way? Like, why did you give that person that feedback that way? Why did you speak to that person that way? Why were you ridiculously unprofessional here? You know better than that. Like, you know that you shouldn't do those things. And it's kind of, I don't know if it links to ego, but like comparing yourself to like this perfect version of yourself and saying like, why weren't you the perfect version? Why did you do this instead of this?
Yeah, massively. I think that it's interesting, isn't it? Because the ego is built from when we're younger, and we start off and we don't have any shame really. We're just running around and having fun, and I see it in my kids as well and whatnot. But as you start getting friendship groups, as you start realizing the importance of being around people and the fitting into society, the you start adjusting yourself in accordance to the beliefs that you pick up. So, maybe, I don't speak out in these situations, or you don't be loud here, or you don't, it's not societally acceptable to X, Y, or Z. And then that's where the shame starts creeping in when we start going against those things. But I think it's really interesting in comparison, isn't it? That a lot of people, I'd say majority of people, don't know the comparisons we make on a day-to-day basis. You just kind of walk around comparing yourself to, man, I bet I've made some like really like obscure comparisons to like someone I don't have no aspiration to be, but you just see them, you're like, and that's pretty good. Why can't I be like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just a funny one with that. But yeah, I think the ego definitely, because we so buy into this almost two things. One of what we are with this solid, immovable thing according to the ego, and then what it thinks we should be. And it's just constantly needling us like, oh, why are we here? Why are we here? Why are we here? Why are we not over there? I'm just interested in where the idea of what we should be comes along.
Like when it comes along.
Yeah, or how it's created. And I was having an interesting talk with I was having a beer with my best mate the other day, and we would say, what if, I wonder what our younger selves would see if they could see our older selves. And I just thought, God, I would absolutely think, man, I'm such a sellout, and like I'd let the fight down, and I didn't just give up everything and go and travel the world and be a rock star. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But I mean, is that what we're fighting against as adults? Like, do we still hold that part of ourselves that our kid selves thought would be?
That plus, I think you also tell yourself off. When you've got that kind of internal dialogue, you tell yourself off in the style of the authority figures from when you were younger. So, like, you talk down to yourself like your parents are. So, I mean, I imagine that some people who were probably less fortunate and had authority figures in their life that when they would do something wrong, when they would fail, they would call them, a failure. They would say, "You're fucking stupid." You've let everybody down there, and be really hard on them rather than kind of explain to them what they've done wrong. And that probably becomes a lifelong problem for a lot of people. So they kind of catastrophize every single mistake that they make rather than just like kind of being able to rationalize it to the point of, yeah, I fucked up. Yeah, I need to fix that. And instead, they take it personally.
Well, yeah, because they're saying you are the thing, aren't they? Like, you get the message, you are naughty, you are stupid, you are whatever. And it's not like you are like now. I know that in my kids' school, they certainly say they've made bad choices. They're not naughty, they've made bad choices or something like that. It's always something that is it's not as permanent. But I think if you hear that message often enough, then yeah, you start to believe
which
it.
like the older generation would denounce that as utter woke nonsense. But it's absolutely like that kind of language, right? And the words that you use to kids when they're in that impressionable stage is absolutely critical for their future mental health.
They can say what they want for absolute woke nonsense, but the suicide rate keeps going up.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like generally, I think our parents, or parents of people our age, struggle to understand, like, that actually they didn't do it right, and actually a lot of the parenting that we had when we were growing up was potentially causes a lot of shame and guilt, and all of these things that we experience.
Yeah, but as did every generation before them. Do you know what I mean? The hope is that each generation we're getting closer to something. But I'm sure my kids will think I'm an absolute idiot, and I'll be
Phil.
no, well, not. I'm a bad example, but
good example.
But,
I think there's something that, when you mentioned about the suicide rate and like in today's times, if you like, I think it's like it's intensified, and it only gets more intense, the comparison, because if you go back generations and generations, you didn't have social media. Like, the only media that you saw, or the comparison that you saw necessarily, was maybe somebody that you saw in your local village, and you went to the pub maybe, and it was in your social circle, or you maybe saw these kind of Hollywood stars on TV, and movies. That was the kind of media of the time, right? But now, like, media, I mean, with all of the different social media apps, it's so intense. And it is, everything is a comparison. You can't even, if you start to even like search for fitness, let's say, probably a bad niche, but like, let's say you kind of, with an element of like naivety or honesty about the whole situation. You're just looking for maybe ways to get fitter. Before long, the algorithms of these social media apps will just like absolutely bombard you with comparison, you know, and it goes for every, you know, it's keeping up with the Joneses is just so intense now.
Yeah.
And like I even found it when like my social media before I got rid of it was all about, you know, building a better life, you know, and like trying to be productive and like trying to get more out of life, which on the face of it would be like, well, that should be quite healthy, right? That should be, you know, that's a good thing to get after, is to try and get more out of life and have a better life. But in actual fact, it had the opposite effect because you never felt like you were doing enough.
Yeah.
In comparison to what you were
There's
being
always
compared
someone
to.
that's doing better, you know, able to, you know, be calmer, be fitter, be,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
if you're not getting up,
more grounded.
if you're not getting up at 4:30 in the morning and going for a run, and then you go and doing like two or three different jobs, and then like sleeps for weekends, like that's how toxic it can get, you know. And I just think like now, and I do worry for like kids, and you know, like, you know, we're probably the first generation to like almost see, probably old enough to see before social media and now. But like kids now and younger people will sound like an old fart now, but like younger people will have just grown up with social media and they don't
It's
know any
their
different.
norm.
Yeah.
It's the norm.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, James, you're exactly right. Sorry, I can't do video because I'm driving.
Sorry.
I mean, that I remember before it was all that being home, everything you just said just made me think of this whole trip to Kansas, which is in the middle of the country, you guys. I mean, it's flat and it's just, you know, growing up there is very simple, which I appreciated growing up. The challenge that I saw being there this week was that like I think it sounds really snooty. It's not that I like left and like became better somehow, but it's just I don't have as much in common with all my family that I used to. And I found myself in certain situations like sitting there and being like, I don't know what to talk about. Like it was really, you know, like going back to like the norms and how we're you know, how our ego is formed, I guess. It was like listening to the stuff that my dad and my uncles, who I looked up to, I still do, like, you know, but I was like hearing some of the stuff that come out of their mouths, and like, I mean, sometimes I was like a little embarrassed. I was like, I can't believe they're saying this right now.
What, just like old-fashioned views and stuff?
Yeah, old-fashioned views, like things that just like are very not appropriate at times.
We get you. We get you.
We understand.
We're there with you, Tanner.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, I think in some ways I had been avoiding it because I knew that was the case. Going there, I was a little worried because I didn't know what the outcome was. Watching it, like everything's fine. Like Annie and I, you know, we're back home. We feel comfortable in our own home. But like going back to what it was, like what you said, James, was like we grew up in a time where it was just the people you were around, right? Like so our family, our friends, whoever you surrounded yourself, that was more or less your social media. And so you that was your little nest. Now it's like this whole entire world view that's super complex, creates problems, right? I think people who create social media, who like Zuckerberg or whatever, I think he knew that it was going to create a social problem, but like it is what it is now. It's just the norm.
Yeah. There's a really good documentary about it on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. Which is like all about like the polarization of like left and right, and you know how
it's a documentary, right?
Yeah.
It's a very good.
It's very good.
It stars that guy Vincent Cartizer out of Mad Men. And he plays the snivelling little shit Pete Campbell, and he's absolutely perfect to kind of present this case, because Pete Campbell's a piece of shit, right? And then when you've got Pete Campbell telling you how social media works, you just kind of like, you're like, wow, this is fucking insidious.
Yeah. So because it's like it's a film within a documentary, isn't it? If I remember rightly. Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Phil.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think there's something in what you know, almost linking the the suicide rate and the past generation, and a little bit of the way social media has dealt with it. I think the big problem is that everything is either the best or the worst. Everything is either completely, or you either went to war or it's woke nonsense, and there's nothing in between. And I think there's so much in between that gets ignored. But everyone over here thinks everyone over here is a woke cry baby thing. I don't know what.
Snowflake.
Yeah, of course.
Snowflake.
And
Well,
then
like what you
yeah.
oh god.
No. I was just going to go on the same point, but just in more elaborate metaphors.
It's interesting because I've got people like in my family that like obviously my dad is the generation above me, and I've got a brother-in-law who's like older than me by probably about 20 years. And I taught like it's almost like if I talk to them about this concept of comparison, and even you talk about shame, it's almost like it wouldn't necessarily like, or feels like it wouldn't necessarily resonate with them. And I wonder whether that is because of like, I don't know, is it more amplified now? Like, is it, or is it just relative? It's almost.
So I think what we've had a longer time and more experience and more tools to name it and to experience it and to be with it.
Yeah.
And I think they weren't raised in a thing like where it was, if you don't identify it and you don't connect to it, how are you going to know when it comes up? It's not something as easy as sitting down and being, I feel shame.
Yeah.
And it comes on these multi-layered levels, and these are the multiple different ways I can react to it. It's just, that folding over of guilt and shame, and they're kind of the same thing. But we don't talk about that. And that's it,
It's very much like I think our generation, to an extent. I mean, definitely, obviously, this group of people here, like, we talk about things and we talk about, feelings and stuff. Can't imagine my dad talking about how he feels, or like having a difficult conversation about, being a dad, or like, choices that he made, or whatever that might be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably same with my mum as well, right?
Yeah, but I think it doesn't have to be all feelings or all stoicism. I think there's
a balance.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in being able to be strong and being able to be tough in certain situations, but knowing that that's not always the default. You can also express your feelings from a position of toughness. You don't have to completely break down every time, but you can access your feelings and access your emotions and talk about them without them being overwhelming and doing it. But who knows? I'm sure our kids' generation will have discovered something that is so ingrained in us, it's difficult to get out. And like just like our parents probably felt more involved than their parents, and so forth and so forth.
Yeah.
That would be my.
Conversely, that flips the whole discussion around social media on its head, because social media did in fact drive that conversation within our generation about feelings, perceptions, and toxicity and all that. That wouldn't have happened without social media. There would not have been a channel that could have carried that message otherwise.
That was
because
the
it gave
disruptor.
voice to people who didn't have one.
That was the disruptor to the system. Are you sure you're sick, Stephen?
He's got the post flu clarity, hasn't he?
He's on a fever dream now.
Yeah.
This is actually just all an illusion in your head, Stephen. This isn't happening.
Basically, I'm just gonna wake up in a cold sweat in about 10 minutes and just be like, "What the fuck was that? What was that dream even?"
I love it.
It's a really good point, though. I mean, they always
extreme lucidity.
Yeah.
Yeah, like stuff like, World Mental Health Day, and like, people talking about their mental health, and like people talking about, yeah, like opening up about their feelings on camera to nobody but to everybody is like, I think it's, yeah, it is definitely like made it easier to talk about stuff.
There's definitely pros and cons, isn't there?
But I do think that social media has magnified shame for people, because it is so intensely comparative. So like, because people only ever put, apart from the odd, for the most part, you're going to see people's best achievements and best selves and best things that they're doing, and no one posts about the, you know, the day where you're just sitting around in your pants all day.
Everybody's selling stuff, isn't it? That's what it is. It's all huge sales.
Compare. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's that snap at the holiday, you know, the holiday snaps. And it is a, you know, don't get me wrong, there will be some people who are sincere, but I think generally people are like, nah, this is pretty cool. I want to snap this photo so I can put it on Facebook or whatever, and just be like, look at me. And that's fine, you know, like, you know, but I think you've got to catch it, haven't you? I think that's the thing. It's about that awareness of what you're consuming. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to this, but can it be used in a healthy way? Because I've recently got rid of a lot of my social media because it was just I don't know. It was
I couldn't figure that away.
I deleted mine as well.
Yeah, I've come off.
Gotten on.
Come off pretty much everything apart from I'm on Instagram, but I don't post anything. I just normally just wait for movie trailers.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say something funny. Not really like boobs.
although Jen did see my my like discover page on Instagram the other day, and she was like, "Why are there just so many girls, like naked girls on there?" And I'm like, they're not naked for a start, but that is I think that's every straight man's Instagram discover page, right?
Mine's just thoughtful things.
Thoughtful thing. There's like just basically models, and then like maybe one like picture of
me,
like Sunderland or something like that.
Yeah, I had to delete. Okay.
I watched one fitness video.
You'll have to blur this out.
Dudes, no.
Going back to something that I think we all said it kind of in a different way, but like one of the things that I saw, my experience was like being back home and like talking to my dad. And I asked Annie, I said, do you think my dad wants to have like a really deep conversation? I was like, I just don't get the sense that he's like wanting to have too many conversations. And Annie was like, no, he doesn't. He does not want to have the deep conversation that you think he wants to have. And I was like, but why? And I had a very good, not a mediocre conversation with my mother. And then she like got uncomfortable, I think, and was like, oh, no, let's just not talk about that. But why is it that previous generation has such a hard time, like, we'll just talk about our group, like meeting us where we want them to maybe be?
That's an interesting one, man.
That's their internalized shame, isn't it?
It shapes you. We just talked here about how like social media like influences like a lot of positivity, you know, like, you know, there's some positives to it where you talk about feelings, you know, and whether you believe it's woke or not, it's like, you know, there's a lot of, I suppose, beliefs and a lot of good stuff that comes out of it. So that generation probably it wasn't normal for them to talk about feelings. It was
in my family it's particularly frowned upon to talk about stuff that's awkward or difficult.
Well, it's showing weakness, it's showing vulnerability, and that in itself is shameful, you know. If we're keeping it on topic, I think you were shamed for caring.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, I know even when I remember being at school and you know, being cool was not giving a crap and not caring about anything and not expressing emotion and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I imagine it was more like that when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if there's I don't know if there's even I don't know if they see the value in it or the need to.
Yeah.
I think I think for my particular situation that's it. They're like, why bother? Why does anyone want to hear about our problems? Everyone has their own problems. Why would you want to burden somebody? So just don't bring it up at all.
Mm.
For a long time, I thought because they didn't care. I don't know. I told this story about when I was on the sick, and like my dad was like, worried I hadn't gone back to work. He was, he started off saying, will work be all right? I was like, I don't care. Like the way I'm feeling, I don't care. And then I'd been off for about 6 months, and he just like he asked me. He says, "Are you like? Is everything okay?" I was like, just randomly out of the blue, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah, good." Because then he switched the conversation like you would normally do, like, and he started to tell me about this funeral he went to. I'm like, where's he going with this? And he proceeded to tell me this story about a friend of his whose son killed himself. And I was like, he never said like, I'm worried about, like, he never said the words like, I'm worried about you, care about you, is everything okay? It was just like, how you doing? Very, easy going. But then when he went onto this story, and I was like, I connected the dots. I was like, that was on his mind, and you just care. So even though, like, it's not in their nature to be deep, I think, I'll be open. I think the deepness is still there. I think that's definitely something to hold on to.
They do it in the capacity of which they're comfortable,
Yeah,
which isn't much, which is maybe a little. And I think that's it too. Like I think I got some strong bear hugs and some I love you, I'm proud of you, but like then there was like nothing else. And so I think it's camouflaged in the way that they deliver it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was having a rough time when I was younger, and my dad didn't quite. I don't know if he didn't know what to say or have you, but I remember it meant loads to us that he went and found some like documentaries and stuff on similar things I was going through, and he's like, this might interest you. And I knew in his own way he'd been gone, and he'd done some like research about it and tried to kind of put me onto it, and that was always cool. But I think that was his version of that. It's always stuck with us a bit. It's weird, isn't it?
Holidays are a great time to practice all of this. We
best.
Americans get one jump on you because we get Thanksgiving in there. So we've practiced for the holiday to come.
So, Tanner, can I ask you a serious question about Thanksgiving?
Sure.
So, is it a bigger deal than Christmas in America? So is it like Thanksgiving is the primary holiday and Christmas is the follow-up, or is it, as you've just described it there, the starter, the appetizer for the main event?
I think it's the start of I think it's the appetizer to the main event.
So it's the intro to the holiday season.
Yeah, I think some families have, for whatever reason, maybe like Thanksgiving more because of football or there's things associated to that time and that thing.
So like everyone back in the hometown go to the college football game or the big games on TV or whatever.
Yeah, but I think that it is if you surveyed everyone, it would be statistically shown that it's the appetizer to the supper, dinner.
Christmas number one.
Got it.
Yeah. Jesus was born.
Yeah, big win for the big dog. Jesus.
For the J-man.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording now, and we can just carry on.
Did you get enough content, Phil? Were we good as gold?
You might have to cut that bit out where James asks you about the quality
of
content.